All right, cool. So I'm going to tell you the story of how we ended up rendering Blender scenes on Lambda. But first, and I'm cheating a little bit, apologies. So it was going to be way faster. But first, I came to the realization that humans differ from all the other birds because bird parents pre-chew food and then give it to their kids. My kid pre-chews food and then I eat it. And we'll see how this relates to our topic. Now let's talk about sneakers. This is how Vans designers used to design shoes in 2D with Adobe Illustrator. Like picking like a silhouette and picking colors, placing 2D graphics, imagining what it would look like. And so a few years ago, my team started working with them, shifting from 2D to 3D. So this is the WebGL application we built with them that helps them like select materials, colors, graphics from curated libraries. And they loved it. So they came to us and were like, hey, what if you rendered photorealistic previews of what we're designing? Like, Pixar style. I'm like, I like Pixar, but that sounds expensive. So when they asked for this, we're like, how are we going to do this? Is it even possible? So of course we thought we're going to need servers, and that's what's going to make it expensive. So we looked at solutions, we looked at Blender, and Blender came up pretty fast because it's a pretty cool tool that is very automatable. And then we realized we could actually run Blender on a Lambda function, so serverless. So we would like spin up a Blender Lambda function, load a Blender scene, dynamically apply settings, which are the settings that the designer applied in their WebGL app, and then trigger a render, and beautiful images come out. This graph gives you an idea of how often they would need to create new renders. So most of the time, they don't. But from time to time, they need a bunch of renders. So that's where serverless was a very good fit, because most of the time you pay for nothing, and suddenly when you need, let's say it's the day before a big deadline and everyone's working on their projects, and you have hundreds of renderings happening at the same time, but the rest of the year you're not paying for a render farm. So you're pretty happy. It's very efficient. This is what comes out of it. It's pretty cool. Even though Lambda functions are not very powerful, each Lambda starts, and within 1 second, they start rendering. So they've spun up Blender, loaded a scene, etc. Going back to the birds, sometimes when app developers hand over code to an infrastructure team that needs to run them in production, it can feel like this. And we don't like that. So going serverless means that there was one less thing that developers needed to hand over to the infrastructure teams. So there was one more happy infrastructure person somewhere in the world. And they had fewer things to manage, less work, still a lot of work. So now let's take a few seconds to talk about Blender. Blender was created by this person, Toon Roosendaal, in the Netherlands about 30 years ago. And the story of that project, that open source project, is quite fascinating, like for many open source projects. Only in 2002 it became open source when Toon created a foundation to buy back the intellectual property of the failed company that had created Blender, that he had created Blender at, and now it's supported by big names, but also many small people and small companies. Almost everything inside Blender is accessible through a Python API, which is incredible and gives you superpowers, as long as you care to do something with it. If you ever want to do something with it, you can just search serverless Blender, and you'll find this like quick recipe on how to do what we did. It's really simpler than you might think. Now, so who am I? I'm the father of 2 boys. I'm French. I live in New York. I eat their food that they spit out and spread on the table. I'm also the CTO of Theodo in the US. So shameless plug. What is Theodo? We're a team of about 700 people. 2/3 of them software engineers, spread across New York, London, Paris. And in the US, we specialize in building custom software for fashion brands, helping them improve the overall efficiency and sustainability of their processes, from design, manufacturing, sales, to retail, etc. Thank you. Hope you appreciate the handmade art in GIMP. No Gen AI for this one.